Baldur's Gate 3 has over 17 unique spells in the game. Okay, that's a bit of an understatement because according to Larian, there are actually over 600 unique spells in Baldur's Gate 3. With so many different spells, it's common to overlook the ones that are extremely useful, powerful, and game-changing. In this video, we take a look at 5 of those underappreciated spells that definitely should be on your radar and spellbook ready. I'm Spooky Pops, let's get into it. The first spell is devastating for a powerful enemy. Hold Person is a level 2 enchantment spell that allows the player to hold a humanoid enemy still. The affected enemy can't move, act, or react. Attacks from within 3 meters are always critical hits. So let's break this down. A successful use of this spell essentially paralyzes an enemy, preventing them from doing anything. Moving, attacking, counterattacking, spellcasting, or taking an action or bonus action. When the combat comes around to their turn, it skips over them as if they didn't exist. The other great part about this spell is that it guarantees that any attacks from close range are automatic critical hits. This spell then has 2 effects. You prevent the enemy from doing damage, while you quickly nuke the enemy with critical hits. There are so many encounters where this spell is godlike. Any fight that features one powerful enemy along with several henchmen becomes a breeze. You can simply use Hold Person to paralyze the one powerful enemy to an action while quickly dispatching the weak mobs. Then turn on the boss, guaranteeing a quick and decisive fight. As I mentioned before, this spell is a level 2 enchantment spell, meaning that the base spell requires a level 2 spell slot. For those of you who may not know, using a spell with a higher level spell slot enhances and upgrades the original spell. The game calls this upcast. An enhanced Hold Person allows you to paralyze and hold additional enemies. Each level allows you to target one more enemy. For example, using this spell with a level 4 spell slot allows you to target and hold 3 unique enemies. Suddenly, any fight with more than one powerful enemy also becomes super easy. Simply use your spellcaster to target each enemy you're worried about, and they can't do a thing. There are limitations to this spell, however. For one, you can only use the spell on a humanoid. Second, the spell is not a 100% guaranteed to hit. Click onto the spell and then hover over the enemy to see the success probability. For many bosses, this number can get rather low. Third, the spell is concentration based, meaning any damage done to the spellcaster has a % chance to stop or break the spell. So unfortunately, these types of spells can be countered by attacking the spellcaster. Of course, when this spell is used against you, you'll be glad that there's a counter. Note that a concentration spell has to be used one at a time. So if you have used Hold Person, don't cast an additional concentration spell or you risk breaking the Hold Person. Although these limitations can be tricky to work around, the spell is extremely powerful and can turn a tough fight into a walk in the park. Hold Person is a must-have on your spell bar. The next spell makes for an excellent defense. Sanctuary is a level 1 abjuration spell that blocks or prevents almost all damage. The tooltip reads you or an ally cannot be targeted until you attack or harm a creature. You can still take damage from area spells. If that wasn't clear, it then says until the affected entity attacks or harms another creature, it cannot be targeted by enemy attacks. However, it can still take damage from spells that influence a larger area. So, Sanctuary provides a temporary respite from almost all damage. The only way to damage a unit with Sanctuary is through an AoE ability. Because the spell is only a bonus action, the spell is versatile. One effective way to use Sanctuary is by casting it on yourself after taking an action. This use of the spell can be so frustrating to play against. As long as you have available level 1 spell slots, you can use this method multiple times. The other really effective way to use this spell is by casting it on a squishy ally who is in the middle of multiple enemies. For example, a rogue who slipped into melee range for a stealth attack is vulnerable to counterattacks. A well-timed Sanctuary spell can negate any counter and allow the rogue precious time to reposition. The best way I've found to counter this spell is by a large AoE spell. An Evocation Wizard has powerful AoE spells such as Fireball or Ice Storm that covers a large area with lots of damage. Note that using a higher level spell slot with Sanctuary does not gain a bonus upcast effect. Sanctuary is one of the best defensive spells in the game to be used as a get out of jail free card. This next spell is a level 1 evocation spell with one specific utility. Thunderweave is an AoE knockback spell that, if used in the correct situation, can be deadly. The spell releases a wave of thunderous force that pushes away all creatures and objects. There are lots of fights that happen around cliffs, bottomless pits, or sharp drop-offs that can result in death. Unlike the shove action, this spell doesn't rely on the athletic skill, although the enemy unit may still resist by a constitution save roll. Another difference between shove and Thunderweave is its AoE effect. If an opportunity arises where multiple enemies group up near an edge, Thunderwave can be an insta multi-kill. My favorite way to use this spell, however, is to transform my wizard into an assassin by combining Thunderwave with Misty Step. This trick can be used on a powerful boss that can be difficult to kill and stays aloof and out of melee range. The big drawback to Thunderweave is that it can place a squishy spellcaster in melee range, which is never great. Additionally, you are unable to loot the body if you push the enemy into the abyss, so you have to weigh the pros and cons for using this maneuver. It should be noted that this spell also does damage, but let's be honest. If you are using this spell, you aren't using it for the damage. Command is a level 1 enchantment spell that commands a creature to flee, move closer, freeze, drop to the ground, or drop its weapon. So there are different ways you can command an enemy. The most basic of these variants is Halt. Halt stops the enemy from moving or taking an action. Essentially, it is a miniature hold person spell. The next variant is Flee, commanding the enemy to move away from the spellcaster without taking any other action. This variant can be useful for increasing the distance between an enemy and squishy allies. Next, Grovel causes a creature to fall prone on its turn without further action. The next variant can be used in a variety of interesting ways. Drop commands the enemy to drop its weapon without taking any further action. This variant can be used to take the bite out of a powerful enemy. Bosses that usually do 15 damage with each attack might only do 5 damage with an unarmed attack. Then, with the weapon dropped, it's yours to steal. Most commonly, this spell is used in the beginning of the game in the Nautiloid ship. The commander wields a giant 2-hand greatsword that's a powerful starting melee weapon. You can use this spell on a variety of melee bosses. I've even heard that you can use it against NPCs outside of combat, but I haven't had success with that yet. The last variant of the spell is Approach, where you command an enemy to move towards you without taking further action. This variant can be useful for the squishy boss who wants to keep its distance. Note that the Upcast Enhanced version of this spell allows you to target an additional enemy with a higher spell slot. Ultimately, this spell can be used in a variety of ways to great effect and should not go overlooked. Speaking of spells that are easy to overlook, the last spell is easy to miss because of how lackluster it feels in early levels. I remember thinking how weak the spell felt in early levels during my first playthrough. However, Magic Missile is one of the best damage spells in the game. The spell is a level 1 evocation spell that shoots 3 magical darts, each dealing 2 to 5 force damage. They always hit their target. There are several great aspects to Magic Missile. First, it can be used as a single target spell for a huge burst of health. This tactic works well against a boss or powerful foe with a large health pool. Or, if there are multiple enemies with low health, the spell can be used against 3 or more enemies as a finisher. Second, the spell is force damage, which as far as I know, I have yet to encounter an enemy with force resistance. Thus, the spell becomes a great way to kill enemies with multiple resistances, which is frequent at the end of the game. Third, the enhanced version of Magic Missile is insane. The base spell slot required is level 1, granting 3 darts. As you use a higher spell slot, you gain additional darts to fire. This effect becomes extremely powerful when you use a level 4, 5, or 6 spell slot, giving the ability to chunk an enemy for 70 plus health. Lastly, the spell has a range of 18 meters, and the spellcaster does not need to have a direct path to the enemy, which is perhaps the best part of this spell. As long as the enemy is in range of the spellcaster, the spell is guaranteed damage. This effect becomes crazy good when you are fighting in a disadvantageous position or cannot see your enemy. Magic Missile is indeed a game changer. Here are some honorable mentions for you to consider that are more known than my original 5. Fireball, Ice Storm, and Lightning Bolt are 3 incredible AoE abilities that pack a huge punch covering a large area. Misty Step is a great defensive spell that allows you to reposition to any area you can see. There are even ways that non-spellcasters can gain access to the spell. Eldritch Blast is an evocation cantrip that deals plenty of damage, especially for it being a cantrip. Finally, any spell that allows you to summon a temporary ally, such as the level 6 planar ally spell, is usually a strong spell. And those are 5 of the most powerful, underappreciated spells in Baldur's Gate 3. Try them out for yourself and let me know how it goes. Am I missing any spell you find particularly good? Let me know in the comments below. If you are enjoying this Baldur's Gate 3 content, please consider subscribing to my channel for more BG3 content. That's it for me. Spooky Pops out.